curfews, talk to them. Remind your siblings, children, parents, and friends of the importance of social distancing. We will all get through these challenging times, but only if we can all work together. Hashtag Stay Home Cayman.
Dear parents and guardians, we deeply care about our students and understand the challenges you may now face during these unprecedented times.
We want you to know that we are committed to ensuring that your child's education continues.
And that you are not alone. We are doing everything we can to make sure no child is left behind.
But to do so, we need your help to get connected and stay connected with you and your child. So reach out to us and speak with us
about how we can best support you and your needs. Working hand in hand with you is the only way to secure our children's future.
We are in this together.
A message from the Creek and Spot Bay, East End, Prospect, Red Bay, and Sir John A. Cumber schools.
In this time of crisis, we are right here to help keep the power on.
We are here to serve you. We are committed to ensuring that you have electricity. Without electricity, not many things will work.
We are right here to help keep the power turned on.
We are CC. You can count on us.
Digital banking, online, RBC. RBC banking, online, pay your bills anytime.
RBC digital banking is so easy. Even Granny and Granddad can do it. Sign up for online banking or download the RBC Caribbean app.
With RBC, it's safe and easy. Send your money hassle-free. RBC.
Visit rbc.com/Caribbean/bank at home. RBC Royal Bank. Banking reimagined.
Live from Star 927 Studios in the center of Cayman's capital city, Georgetown. This is Straight Talk with Ruth Anna.
Good evening, everybody. You are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young. Always honored to be your host here on Straight Talk every Monday through Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here and nowhere else other than Star 92.7. It is 5:02 p.m. on the Star 92.7 clock, and it is the 3rd of June. Happy birthday to all of you celebrating birthdays today or anniversaries or work anniversaries. Happy birthday anniversary to you. This afternoon, I am honored to have back in the virtual studio with me, and he'll be joining me shortly. You can see him there if you're tuned in via the Facebook stream. The Honorable Mr. Arden McLean, the Leader of the Opposition. He'll be with me until 6 o'clock this evening. And he was the first time he joined me a little bit back. We were here in the studio, and now he joins me in the virtual studio. 943-3700 is the line in studio. And of course, if talking ain't your thing, you can also email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. And you can also WhatsApp me at 324-1565 to join in this conversation. And we are streaming live video from the Star 92.7 Facebook page. So you can also leave your comments there or questions there. And I will be sure to read as many of them out as possible. But you guys know the deal. Before we go any further into this conversation, we always start our time together with the reading of today's Daily Bread, a moment focused on God. So today's Daily Bread is entitled Sacred Gathering and comes from Leviticus 23 verse 40 and reads, "Rejoice before the Lord your God for 7 days." Our group of friends reunited for a long weekend together on the shores of a beautiful lake. The days were spent playing in the water and sharing meals. But it was the evening conversations I treasured the most. As darkness fell, our hearts opened to one another with uncommon depth and vulnerability, sharing the pains of faltering marriages and the aftermath of trauma some of our children were enduring. Without glossing over the brokenness of our realities, we pointed one another to God and his faithfulness throughout such extreme difficulties. Those evenings are among the most sacred in my life. I imagine those nights are similar to what God intended when he instructed his people to gather each year for the Festival of Tabernacles. This feast, like many others, required the Israelites to travel to Jerusalem. Once they arrived, God instructed his people to gather together in worship and to do no regular work for the duration of the feast, about a week. The Festival of Tabernacles celebrated God's provision and commemorated their time in the wilderness after leaving Egypt. This gathering cemented the Israelites' sense of identity as God's people and proclaimed his goodness despite their collective and individual hardships. When we gather with those we love to recall God's provision and presence in our lives, we too are strengthened in our faith. Thanks be to God for that word today. As always, here on Straight Talk, we remind you, we encourage you to spend time each and every day focused on his word, meditating on his grace and how awesome he is, whether it be in the morning or the evening or right here with me, Monday through Thursday on Straight Talk. With that, I invite Mr. Arden McLean into the conversation. Welcome back. How are you doing?
I am fine, and thank you very much, Ruth Anna, for inviting me to come on the radio with you. You know, this is strange for us with the virtual thing nowadays, but that's the nature of going forward, it seems.
Absolutely. And a special shout out to people already sending love on Facebook. Miss Yvette, thank you for tuning in. And Mose, all the way from the UK, good afternoon. Well, it's good night there for you, but good night to you. Thank you for tuning in. And a number of other people who are locked in this afternoon. My mother is tuning in on Facebook. Johnny Joke and Ever Faithful. Thank you so much. I see our friends at Chicken Go are also tuned in this afternoon. Mr. Lennon, Miss Martha, thank you all for locking it in to Star 92.7 and Straight Talk this afternoon. And so I don't think we've caught up on air during this particular time. So at first, what have you been up to? How have you been spending your time and kind of managing through this COVID pandemic experience?
Well, I've been spending most of my time in the East End, really, trying to assist people in that district, particularly those who were most vulnerable, and assisting them. And then, there are all these meetings. We had the legislature twice now, which we had to work through. One of those times we had never done that before in this country. So that had to be properly conducted between the opposition and the government, so that we didn't make mistakes and the likes. And the Attorney General was an integral part of that also. But it has been a busy time. It has been a very busy time for everyone. For instance, I brought in 2,000 cloth masks long before government did, and distributed them on foot to every household in East End. We may have missed one or two, but we are going back over and dealing with that. And then we continue to distribute masks and other things to assist people, especially during this period, because, it was no fault of anyone's that we have fallen into this position, but each of us help one is all we need.
Absolutely. And shout out to Mr. 24/7 Towing, Mr. Theodore. I see you sending love on Facebook. And Mr. Arden, you're a popular guy, I must say. I got to tell you. Lots of love coming in very early. But I know that it has been unprecedented times in our country as well as across the world. And like everywhere else, I think we are grappling with what the way forward is. We've seen, the complete shutdown of tourism. And yes, we are having conversations about how we resume a domestic economy. And we see people getting excited about staycations and the like. But the country as a whole was largely shut down during this time. And as we've gradually reopened and construction and other industries have resumed bit by bit, as we navigate this time. And I think that in one way, shape, or form, everybody has been hard at work and trying to figure out what we do moving forward. And I think it's safe to say that many of us, while this has been a very challenging time for many, and continues to be a very challenging time for some economically, others the emotional strain of it all, psychological aspect of it, and some a little bit of, for some it's a bit of both. I think we can also agree that there are opportunities to do better, and to potentially, craft a better way forward, and make some changes or decisions along the way that may otherwise we have not had the opportunity to make. And I think yesterday, and over a couple of conversations, I had work in the studio with me yesterday, and a few of the other business conversations that I've had over the course of the week have acknowledged this is an opportunity that has forced us to move forward in technology, right? But it also presents opportunities in other areas. And I know you spoke to this in the first ever virtual meeting of the Legislative Assembly as well. But I do want you to share with my listening audience and the general public as a whole, as you've watched the last few months unfold and what has transpired here at home, what do you consider some of the opportunities for us to do what I call do better moving forward, and to plan better for circumstances such as this?
Ruth, Anna, it's interesting you brought that up, because on the 20th day of 20th or 21st of May, when we had the Legislative Assembly, the virtual one, I spoke extensively on that. There are many opportunities that will be coming out of this. I think the one that is important, very important to the people of this country, is the opportunity to reset. For us now to press that reset button, all of the ills that we had heard of before, where opportunities were not given to Caymanians, and we have experienced those many times for whatever reason. And there are many horror stories out in our community about not being given opportunities especially within the workplace. This is time to reset it. I have always believed that what we need in this country is a human capital, a comprehensive human capital database, so that we know exactly where people are, whether they're on the job or not, but more importantly, those that are not engaged in this economic miracle. And I believe that this country has been built on the backbones of our people, but certainly it did not go unnoticed, and it should not go unnoticed, that there were other people who came here and helped build this country as well. And those we welcome to this country, and we continue to welcome, because the level of sophistication that this country has reached, it could not have been done with the few of us that are here. So we need to recognize that. However, the time has come where every Caymanian, whether they come from one side of the world or the other, or from East End or West Bay or Kimmelbrack, Little Cayman, must be given those opportunities. For instance, if we know that we have 5-6 Caymanians, and we hear the story all the time, come home with degrees and they can't get a job. I know many who are in that position. Well, we need to see what they are capable of doing and getting opportunities. And education or the university does not prepare you, or all it does is prepare you. You need to get in to get the experience. And if we find that there are a number of those, we need to, even if it's necessary through legislation, we stop all work permits in that category until we are confident that Caymanians in those categories are engaged and on the job. Now, if they don't stay there, and they don't have the aptitude or apply themselves or whatever, then we can't do much about that. But this is their country, that the very least they need to be given the opportunity to fail, because that's what opportunities are about, to fail. So, but when you don't do that, and there are those, I said it in my New Year's message, there are those who do not subscribe to our way of life, and those do not need to be here. And if you do not subscribe to our way of life, then fine. I don't think there's any place here for you. But we have seen many. Look at Miss Olive Miller, who came here as a young woman. And at my age, I was terrified of Miss Olive because I know she would chastise me. But she integrated, and that's what we need. We need people who are going to embrace Caymanians and help lift them as well.
Agreed.
And this this coronavirus is going to give us that opportunity to reset that button.
And I think you have Johnny Doka agreeing with you that says reset, yes, with like a dozen exclamation marks behind it coming in on Facebook. And to those of you who are listening on the radio or via Facebook, and I know my Facebook audience is starting to post comments. So we have Alric Lindsay asks, does the law provide Cabinet with the power to exempt businesses from the requirement to advertise or register with work? If that is the case, then Cabinet can provide tons of waivers if it wishes.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things is that if they can prove that there is no one, that there is no one available on island, then they can be exempt from that advertisement. Somehow I don't support that, but because we have seen so many times, Ruth Anna, where people send out advertisements in the papers for the jobs. They inflate it or do it in such a manner that no one here can meet that. Like you got to speak Japanese or something of that nature. No one meets that criteria. So they go back and they say that they had gotten no one to as an applicant, or for other reasons as well. There are people who we heard about who have done the interviews, and they still submit to the immigration and say no one did it, no one applied. Now many Caymanians are so reluctant to then send their application to the immigration board for verification and for their information. And that is where we're falling down. We trust people. And you know what Reagan said about that? Trust but verify. And I believe we are being taken advantage of in that regard. Thankfully, at the last couple of legislative assembly meetings ago, we now say that it must be on the government portal. It must be advertised on the government portal. I want to see how long that's going to last. But more importantly, I want to know if it's operational, because that is where we need to streamline this thing. We need to ensure that the law is adhered to. And those who can't adhere to it, well, they have to take the punishment that the law makes provision for.
And I think I did have, I had a full team in here from work yesterday, including Mr. Jeremy Scott and many of his, deputies and heads of certain areas. And they spoke about the fact that they've given employers essentially for work permits that would have expired after May 1 that would fall under the requirement to advertise on the Jobs Cayman website. They have on basically until the end of June. They've given an extension to the end of June to get those applications in, because it gives them some time to get registered, advertise for the 14 days, and then submit the work permit applications if they intend to still do so, like if they don't get any qualified Caymanian applicants or the like. And so they spoke about that yesterday, and I am planning and hoping that they will be back again next week, because immigration is a very hot button issue. So I got more questions yesterday than they could possibly get around to in an hour, and so a whole slew of questions came in, that they never, they just never got the opportunity to answer. So, they're hoping to come back next week sometime, and because there are some people who have expressed having difficulties, for example, navigating the Jobs Cayman website from an employee perspective. They eventually got through with it, but as you mentioned, like functionality and things of the sort, it seems to be a little bit of challenges on that end, and nothing starts out perfect. And so it's an opportunity for people hopefully for work to take on the feedback to try to make it I guess easier to navigate for those who are using it. Because even yesterday when they were in the studio, there were some questions that came in from an employer that said, is there somewhere we can call if we are having issues getting the jobs published on the website, for example, right? So it's still being tweaked, but it's up and running, and the requirement is there. And I'm very interested to see what statistics come from this.
And Ruth Ann, I believe one of the things that I should add as a caveat to all of this is that those of us who thinks that the country is going to be rid of all people on work permit had better start changing their minds. All businesses in this country is owned outright by Caymanians, or at least 60% ownership by Caymanians. So the businesses are Caymanians, unless the LCCL, which is foreign controlled. But then that has to go through cabinet as well. Now, it requires people in this country to work in that environment, in those businesses. A country can only survive if its businesses survive. Now, our job is to ensure that those businesses survive, and in particular, we need to put more emphasis on small businesses, because that's where residents, nationals will start, citizens will start with developing small businesses. And you remember Microsoft, I think it was, Microsoft started in a garage. It's a small business. And we need to remember that for the small business or any business to survive in this environment, as sophisticated as it is, it needs human capital. Absolutely. And that requires us to be as lenient as possible for that business to continue, because it is what is the drivers of this economy. The financial industry is one side of the GDP. The small businesses provides another part of it. That's what drives our businesses. So we need to be as receptive as possible, but those employers must engage Caymanians until that human capital has run its course. Then we go to bring in those who we need to keep those business thriving after they have started.
With the Caymanians. And Alric, Lindsay, well, there's a continued thread Johnny Doak responded to Alric's comment saying, it sounds like another way to circumvent the process, meaning he's referring to Cabinet's ability to exempt a business from the need to advertise, right? And, saying that that's a possible way to circumvent the system. And so Alric continues on to say, exactly my point, Johnny Doe. Caymanians are given this feeling of comfort, but rarely do people read the law. The law usually contains exemptions. These exemptions may be dished out at Cabinet's discretion. From your experience, how frequent is it? And I'm sure you won't have exact numbers, but is that something you see often? The request for businesses to be exempt from having to advertise?
Well, not being in cabinet, I would not know that. But what I do know is that this government, over the last two administrations, and in particular this one, they have been dishing out LCCLs like it's some soup kitchen. And LCCLs gives total control to someone else. And even to buy homes, we have been dishing those out. At my last inquiry, which is probably nearly a year ago, there were over 200 of those. When I started politics, it was probably about 12, which is nigh on 20 years now. But what we need to do is our thoughts, and I agree with Lindsay, we need to ensure that this thing is not just done willy-nilly. I understand, and if we go back, those who don't know, when we developed the LCCL provisions in this country, it was to give investors the opportunity to have control over a company for businesses, commodities that we needed that were not available in this country, and Caymanians could not develop them, such as oil, electricity, telephone, and those types of things. It was not just, I believe that for many years, from the 60s, we only had probably 4 or 5 of those issued. For that same reason, it was, we also have a pioneer law, but it was akin to the pioneering of commodities, of utilities that were essential for the betterment of this country and the development of this country and its people. But now we give it out. And yes, Lindsay, maybe we need to, Cabinet needs to consider that we can't just give everybody the opportunity to take away from the Caymanians, who are now a lot better off financially, more so educationally, and capable. I think of Lindsay, lawyer, accountant, MBAs, all these things, who are capable of having that initiative, those ideas to start to develop companies and services that this country needs. And we cannot just give it to someone else to do and deprive Caymanians of that opportunity to do it.
And he, Albert continues on with a comment to what you've said, and says there is a long list of LCCLs. This allows a billion zillion people to bypass the 60-40 rule. Caymanians think that 60-40 is a rule, but this is bypassed on a regular basis. And Johnny Doak says 60-40 is lip service only. Now, in light of
agreed,
and I think hopefully this serves to educate people on that as well. But in light of one event, this global pandemic shutting down a whole industry, one of our pillars of our economy, tourism, it's renewed the conversation about, I think, on the need to diversify Cayman's economy. Are there any conversations taking place or thoughts on your end as to what are some of the other things that we may need or want to look at to ensure that we don't have this kind of fallout in the future should something like this impact us again? Because even a major hurricane, right? We saw how we benefited, unfortunately, from the hurricanes a couple of years ago that hit the Eastern Caribbean, which basically killed their tourism product for a while. So it doesn't take a global pandemic to shut down, a tourism sector. What are some of the other things you think we need to be looking at in terms of diversification in the economy?
Well, Ruth Anna, one of the things the opposition is currently doing is reviewing this entire thing of economy, particularly based on what the Minister for Finance announced a few days ago. However, he has said that that is not the full picture, and there will be more forthcoming. So there are a number of things that we believe needs to be done. Not least of all is that which I talked about, the ensuring Caymanians are given opportunities in the workforce. But more importantly, it's small businesses. The small businesses, the salons, the this, the that, and we need to talk about grants to give to these people. Grants are very, very, very soft loans to assist them with a suspension of repayment and interest and whatnot for quite some time. We also need to talk about our pensions and how we're going to deal with that and its investment in this country. For instance, one of the things we talked about is we don't have a central bank in this country where monies are done based on bonds and whatnot, and the interest rate is controlled. Why can't we use our pensions to invest deposit in the banks with provisos that Caymanians, my pension of all these years should now be working for my 20-something year old son. They come home from university, they get go and borrow at a very low rate from the bank, and that's a proviso for them included in the deposit made to those banks. And the first thing they do is buy a piece of land. It must be to buy land, buy home, or what have you, an investment in this country. That's the circulation of this economy that is going to keep it driving as well, the local economy. And a percentage of that should be allowed by the bank. The bank should be allowed for a percentage of that to be loaned out to customers on short-term basis. That's where they would make their money. Someone who's going to build a hotel, they can lend 100 million to whatnot, who's a preferred customer.
So local
but young,
generally.
Right, but young Caymanians must be have preferential treatment to get homes and ownership in this country. That's one of the diversification that this economy, we need to look at in this economy to drive the domestic economy.
And I don't want you to go on to another thought, because I am going out to my first break of my time together. So I want to pause you right there. I have some other questions coming in. Don't forget if what the next point was, but we're going out to our first break of our time together. And so it is now 5:31 on the Star 92.7 clock. And we'll be right back in about 2 minutes and some change. So keep it locked. I see your questions coming in. I have a few that came in via WhatsApp, so I'll also read them as well and get the Honorable Arden McLean's responses to those when we come back from this break. So keep it locked. We'll go all the way until 6 o'clock right after this break.
Join the conversation. The phone lines are now open. 943-3700. You can also find us on Facebook or email us at straighttalkci@gmail.com.
Burger King has been a part of the Cayman family for decades, and we know our family needs a little extra help right now. So we're introducing the best Whopper deal on the planet. 4 Whoppers for just $10.
We are family. I got 4 big Whoppers with me. We are family. Get up, everybody, let's eat.
The Burger King Family Bundle. 4 Whoppers for just $10. Available at all Burger King drive-thrus for a limited time.
Dear students, we know that you miss your friends, being outside, and most of all, coming to school.
And we hope that you understand that everything happening right now is to keep you safe from harm.
You are our priority. You are the future. So even though this is a very tough time, we believe in you to be the leaders we know you can be.
To stay focused and doing your best work, even when no one is watching.
To be helpful and respectful to your parents and guardians at all times.
To be kind and thoughtful to everyone around you.
To always be thankful, even for the little things.
And most of all, to remember to keep in touch with us, because
we are here for you. Love your teachers.
A message from the East End, Edna Moyle, John Gray, Layman E. Scott, Red Bay, Teoline McCoy, West End, and the Lighthouse Schools.
Roll back. Roll back.
Every Wednesday and Thursday, all Rubis stations are rolling back the price on all fuel purchases by 20 cents. Every customer will save 20 cents on every gallon of fuel purchased on Wednesday and Thursday. Every customer. Only at Rubis.
Roll back. Roll back.
Flow continues to keep your family connected by bringing you the fastest speeds and best price. Last year, we brought you the Hero Plan. This year, we introduce you to the Superhero Plan. Get our Superhero Plan with 200 megabytes of broadband and TV Watch All for only $200 per month. Aren't you a new customer? Get the first month free when you sign up by July 3rd. Visit discoverflow.ky/hero for details. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Flow Cayman Islands. Terms and conditions apply. Flow, you deserve the best.
Welcome back to Straight Talk with Ruth Anna on Star 927.
We are back, folks, and you are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young, with you until 6 o'clock this afternoon. And I am and we'll be joined back shortly by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Arden McLean, who has been with me until 5 o'clock this evening. Since 5 o'clock this evening, he'll be back shortly and joining me in the conversation. I know there are questions coming in, and okay, and so I have him coming back in now, and so I will be certain to try to get all these questions into him. Welcome back, Mr. Arden. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Ruth Ann.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. And 943-3700 is the line in studio. You can also WhatsApp me at 324-1565, or you can email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. And so I want to, I know I may have cut you a little bit before we went out to the break. Was there any part of your thought there do you want to finish off, or another point you want to make before I get into some of the questions and comments that have come in?
Well, one of the things we did when this country was shut down, as a matter of fact, on the 23rd of March, I wrote the Premier, and then again I wrote him on the 1st of May, very lengthy letters laying out our positions on these things. Unfortunately, a receipt was not even acknowledged, but much of what we put in there, we are seeing being done after we submitted it. That's not to say they weren't thinking of it, but certainly, we felt elated that they could be doing some of the things, like the pension. We did not think it should be a mass drawdown. We thought it should have been done based on what the government was doing, which is $850 per month, and everybody could draw down $850 per month, which would, over 6 months, that probably would be about $5,000 per person, and just over 5,000. But now it has gone to the point where the government decided we're going to do 10,000 plus 25% of whatever is left. And people, I supported it, because people can now diversify their own lives, in that they can reinvest that money elsewhere if they so choose. But we must remember that old age is coming upon all of us, and we need to make provision therefore. So then we spoke to him. We wrote him recently about the opening up and how we think that should have gone, with construction and children and the likes. I have not made that public yet, but it is quite a lengthy letter, like 5 pages. So there are opportunities here for us to do this, and to work together in a collaborative effort, not only legislators, because I've always said that if you think the brain power to run this country is down in that out-shaped building, you need to look outside, look out on the waterfront. And that's where the power is. This country was run has been run for many, many years by gatherings on the waterfront and under the boat shade and what have you. That's where legislators got the most of their understanding of what this country needed from. But certainly in today's age, I know people have talked about gambling as a means of another pillar of the economy. Whilst I am not opposed to gambling, I believe that the people have to make that decision. I believe that it could, if we have control over it. But I have seen it worked and not worked, especially within the Caribbean. I have visited all those countries. So we have to be mindful of all these things and these opportunities. The financial industry, we have to protect that. We have to seriously protect the financial industry. I believe one of the other ones that we need to protect is the legal fraternity, but it must be open for opportunities. And right now that's not the case. And I know I will be criticized for this, but I have fought this ever since I came into Parliament in 2000, that the legal industry if we want to call it that, is the place where Caymanians should get opportunities. No one is going to tell me that all those lawyers out there do not have the capacity to become partners. And I didn't say all, but many of them. Not everybody is going to rise to the top. So those are the areas that I believe we need to look at for right now, anyway.
I got you. But thank you for that. So some other comments and questions coming in as well. This is more of a comment than a question from Miss Linda Clark. She says many people have moved here for a job and their spouse has joined them, possibly with family members. The spouse might not have their own rights to work permission, but they work remotely for their previous employer overseas. Caymanians can't compete with two-income families derived this way. They are not currently breaking the law, but it exacerbates the inequality faced by Caymanians. Any thoughts on her comments?
Well, I have lots of thoughts on it, but let me drop one or two. And I think that's why we have lost so much in this country. With the advent of the new technological age, people are working from overseas, but related to the Cayman Islands as well. We have seen that become more and more now with since the coronavirus came was visited upon us, and that is one of the challenges that we need to address. Absolutely, Caymanians cannot deal and compete with that kind of thing. But Caymanians should be allowed to be given opportunities. When I was as a seaman, when I left here and went away, I understood that I was only going to enhance my life and send my money back to my country. I was not going to stay in America nor any other place in the world. And that's how people do this. I do not think that they are of any different mindset than I was when I was 18 years of age and wanted to travel the world, work and see the world free of cost. But we cannot compete with that. But why compete with that? Let us compete at a different level. What I want to see us compete with is opportunities. And it takes a government to provide those opportunities. Government should not have to be handing out and keeping people on the dole. That is not what I signed on to this business for. I want to enhance people's lives so that we don't have to worry about them and their children.
Right. And another comment unrelated to Linda's, Johnny Doak says, and we need to start doing a layman's translation of our regulations and laws so that people actually understand and can speak up. Gazetting laws and regs don't bring any criticism or chat from the average person, which is what it's supposed to do, because legal jargon is foreign to most, so there's no critique from those that might have a point outside of our law firms writing it.
I like that one. I have, recently when I walked out of the Legislative Assembly, I used some parliamentary phrases, some legal phrases in there that I know as I used them, they went over people's head, the ordinary person. Things like constitutional democracy, parliamentary democracy, those type of things go over people's heads. And we need to break them down. I totally agree with that writer.
Yes.
Whilst I understand it from the legal perspective, not being a lawyer, but still understand, and I understand it from the common sense perspective and the practical perspective, we need to get down a little lower. One of these days, I hope, if life is long enough, I will be gone from the Legislative Assembly, and I hope that I be given the opportunity to explain some of these things. And yes, I should be doing it now. I have tried to do that every opportunity I get, because simple things like you may think they're simple, but so many of my friends thought that was like star-eyed at me when I said constitutional democracy. or parliamentary democracy. And there's simple explanation for it. A constitutional democracy is one that is governed by a constitution, a written constitution, which you sign on for. But people wouldn't understand that unless you explain it to them.
Correct.
So
Very, very correct. And people can't participate if they don't understand.
absolutely.
Another question that's come in. Do you know if there's been any further consideration in relation to statutory authorities being able to withdraw from their pensions?
No, there has not been. And the government made a decision, and that decision was based on those people are no worse off than they were before the coronavirus. And because one of the primary reasons they did that, not to allow them to draw in the money, because government is contributing to the public sector. The pension, which government, that's a public service pension. And they're saying that if they would then have to open that up if they make statutory authorities or companies of government, because government also contribute to those by virtue of revenues in them, or by supplementing those authorities. So in essence, directly and indirectly, government contributes to those pensions.
Absolutely.
And they guaranteed that those people will not lose their job during this crisis.
Right. Okay. So that answers the listener's question. And another listener, a regular of the show, says, thank you both for presenting this program. And they are asking from now if you can return early next week. So they're making a request for a follow-up performance and a follow-up show to hear from you next week. So I'll definitely talk with you after we come off the air. So continued comments coming in and questions coming in on Facebook, which I'm going to try to get to as many of them as possible. So Troy Leacock says, what does Mr. Arden think about the dominant economic strategy of national wealth creation through constant population growth? Could this strategy be replaced by one of increasing productivity through education and technology?
Absolutely not. I believe that cultures evolve, but cultures evolve by virtue of, if you want to say, the natural process of expanding the population, which will happen. It was only one of me. I have two boys. If each one of them have one, it increases the population. So through natural birth, I believe, is how we increase the population of any country. I cannot and I will not support bringing in 100,000, increasing the population to 100,000 just to have economic growth. Absolutely not. It's about productivity and opportunities for those we have. Why are we putting our people down at the bottom of the ladder? When I left this country to go to sea I just turned 18. I was a gallerman. I was washing pots, not dishes. My job was to wash the pots after the cooks finished dishing out the food. Within months, there were Caymanians in positions on those ships that gave me the opportunity. I wanted to be an engineer. I told my dad that. And they gave me the opportunity to come to the engine room to learn how that works. Long before, I went to oiler after 4 months. Long before that, I knew exactly what I had to do as an oiler in the engine room, because I was given the opportunity to explore and to fail. And that's what we have to do with this Cayman Islands, so that the domestic economy is robust and we do not need to increase the population to maintain our sophistication.
Thank you for answering that. So, Mr. Leacock, I trusted that answered your questions. And Johnny Joke says, it's sad that others in charge of our lives, the majority, can't express nor answer questions put to them with the empathy Mr. Arden displays. So some props coming into you from Mr.
I thank them for that, Ruth Anna, but that's who I am. That's who I've always been. What you see is what you get. And you ain't saying nothing yet. That's who I am. Why would I pretend to be someone else? I grew up in East End. I bucked my toenails out in East End. I have a point of reference. I know who best knows what this country needs. I keep saying, you see my glory, you don't know my story. And our glory has come from that story. That's where it has come from. Resilience, tenacity, the abilities to think, creativity. You look at all of us, that didn't just drop off a precipice because we have now become a financial center in the world and we provide a service. That didn't just drop off the precipice. We need to ensure that it is enhanced and we capture it from all of those who are coming behind us and leave provisions in place so that those others coming behind, those same ones coming behind, can grasp them and take advantage of them.
Yes, and I think for me, I certainly, as becoming a mother, certainly put perspective for me on how important it is to make decisions that are sound for those who come after. Right, because we realize how short and fickle our own lives are, and how often the decisions we make often don't have a whole lot of impact on what we are experiencing right now, but pave the way for the next generation. So Ms. Linda Clark says we need to have layman's translations of the financial expenditures too, and I think this is in relation to Alex earlier and Johnny Doak's earlier statements about layman's translations for our laws and regs, right? Translations of the financial expenditure to government is mandated to provide value for money, and we don't get it clearly indicated in many of the Auditor General reports. Is there a way that you think government or government departments could play a role in trying to ensure that the public gets a better understanding of how the money is spent? Or is that something that you think that more people from the public just needs to take a greater interest in?
Ruth Anna, when I am no financial guru, I am not. Even if I say so, I'm a pretty good engineer. Okay, that's where it stops. Chris Sanders, he lives that stuff. But I said all that to say, when I have to review thousands and thousands of pages that budget is represented on, it is difficult for us all to understand it because it's prepared by professionals like Ken Jefferson, and he lives that. That's all he does: sleep and eat it. And so it is extremely difficult for anyone to understand it when we're down in finance committee. And I agree with that writer. Somehow government needs to break this down. Now, the Auditor General only picks up specific areas that they see where there may be questions. And then the Public Accounts Committee, I think they're meeting on Friday this week. I'm not on that committee, but it's the most powerful committee in this country.
Agreed.
Because it questions who spent it, why they spent it. It has the right to summon anyone to Parliament, including your good self, Ruth Anna, to question if you are involved in the expenditures of government, purchase, buy, sell, whatever the case may be. And yes, Parliament needs to do better, because all of us have to do better, Ruth Anna, because really, you're concerned about your child. You gotta go to school. You gotta go to this. You got to go to that. You're not interested in listen. You have more on your mind than myself. I'm down there doing that job, and it's difficult enough as it is. Why do you you don't sit in the car listening to that on your way to pick up your child? You're concentrating which swim club or which store you have to go pick up something from. So it's not your job to delve into these things. It's our job. And it's us who has failed this community from that level. It's us who have failed the community.
And as we, I think last week we saw the official announcement come out from the office of the governor, and 26th of May 2021 is the next general election. And as we wind down the last few minutes, what would be some of your advice to the listening public as to, in preparation for what I consider to be one of the biggest decisions we all make on a 4-year basis? What would be your advice, your layman's advice, for what the average person, the voter, or those who are soon to be voters, what should we be doing? Questions we should be asking. How do we need to participate over the next year? Well, now we're a few days shy of the year.
All right. Just let me say, I coined a phrase a long time ago with 3 words that I defined politics with. I said politics is defined by tangibility, measurability, and visibility. And that is in all aspects of life. No one, and I have also said, no one goes to the polls to vote for a country. What can the country do? Everyone goes to the polls, including myself, in my constituency, to vote for someone that I believe is going to enhance my life through the country process. That's what it's about. It's about me. And I believe that people need to take that seriously. If you believe that someone has the capability of enhancing your life, making laws, because you're asking me with a pencil mark to govern you, in essence, that's what you're doing. And if you do not believe that person has the capability of enhancing your life and your family's life, and I'm not talking about handing you anything, I'm talking about governing you. And if you believe that person has that capability, that's your choice. If you don't believe that person is capable of assisting your family and you to enhance your life for those opportunities, I wouldn't advise you touch him, and him or her for that matter. And I believe that's the greatest advice I can give to the people of this country, or any country for that matter. This is your chance. You, like I said to them in the LA recently when I walked out, and we'll discuss that one at the next one if you invite me back. Yeah, like I said to them, I do not own any real estate in the Legislative Assembly. That real estate is owned by the people of East End. It just so happens that I occupy it for a 4-year span each time. They will evict whomever is on their real estate. That's up to them. And the people of East End did not send me to the legislature as the leader of the opposition. They sent me as their representative and to be their voice. That is it. They know nothing about leader of opposition, premier. All they want is for me to represent them to the best of my ability, which will enhance their lives. That's it. That is the fundamentals of a democracy. And it goes further, and it says, the voter must pick up a pencil to mark an X, to X you out. To mark an X, Ruth Anna, giving you the right to tax them, to give it back to them in services.
And that's and I think that is. Oh, see, you touched on something that I'm going to leave it for an actual for me to get into that, because I realize we're just shy of 6 o'clock. And just quickly, because I have like 1 minute left, but Troy Leacock did put another question. Given the economic uncertainty and that many other countries have announced government salary reductions, was the Premier wise in absolutely ruling out any parliamentary or civil service salary reductions? If you could answer that to the best of your ability in like 60 seconds.
Yeah, I believe he was right. Many of us will never understand the sacrifices that people make when they get into the civil service, one, or into the legislature, two. You know, there are many of us in there who took serious pay cuts in our lives to do it. And then we go even further. And we have to help people. But that same wage that you, the people, are paying us, you know, there are very few of us, very few, Ruth Anna, that get home with more than 50% of what we are being paid. Believe me. And we have to make the sacrifices. We don't go there and talk about it, but the Premier was right. You know, there's serious sacrifices, but that's what we wanted to do.
Yes.
I'm not complaining. That's what I wanted to do.
So
No one is
chose it, yeah.
No one is holding any gun to my head or machete to my throat or knife to my throat to keep me there. I can leave at the time I want. But whilst I'm there, I have to make the necessary sacrifices and commitments to the job and immerse myself in it in order that I can help the people of this country, the people of the country that I both love.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Arden. It is now 6 o'clock on the button. Thank you for joining me once again. And I will touch base with you after, because I know that I have had requests to find out if you will return soon. So I want to make that happen for my audience. But I appreciate your time and all the answers that you have provided. And thank you to the listening audience, for those of you who have been so participatory and those of you who have joined in and listened in and sent questions and comments. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for tuning in each and every afternoon. I'll be back again tomorrow right here at 5 o'clock sharp. You know, my same time, same place for Straight Talk. Mr. Arden, I hope are you in your neck of the woods right now? Or I believe you have an office in town, but
I'm at the leader of the opposition office in town.
Okay, so you ventured, you ventured out of the Eastern District. So thank you so much, as always, for joining me. And you and I will chat about what next day you can join us. I hope.
And thank you very much for inviting me. And if I didn't embarrass you so much, you can ask me again.
You're always a great guest, and I maintain the fact that in the Legislative Assembly, and I will say this publicly any day of the week, you are often the most brilliant orator in the show I call the Legislative Assembly. So it is, as much as I enjoy watching you there, I certainly enjoy having you on the show. And one of these days for you, I'll quote a very I could call a segment when the Honorable Miss Juliana was Speaker of the House, and it stuck in my memory from then till today. And one of these days when you join me, I'll quote it for you.
Okay.
I thank you for joining me. But guys, that brings me to the end of my time with you this afternoon. It is 6:02 on the Star 92.7 clock, and I'll be back again tomorrow right here for some more Straight Talk. Thursday marks the end of my Straight Talk week. But I'll be back at 5 p.m. sharp for some more Straight Talk on Star 92.7.
Drop it on me. Connect to the culture.
How much money you got? A lot. How many problems you got? A lot. How many people done doubted? A lot. Love to rock and rock.
Going crazy, feeling from crazy. I got what you need. I'm gonna go get it.
Star 927.
This is my vibe.
It's the Shellings Mix.